All right, can everybody see my screen and hear me okay? Excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, so my name is Christina. I'm the education coordinator at Orange County Coastkeeper. And through this work and my work at the Tide Pools with Laguna Ocean Foundation, I often see a lot of trash, out on our coast when we're typically taking students out on field trips as well. We take them to a lot of different locations. So we just are seeing this trash everywhere. So it kind of inspired me to just make a comprehensive presentation about what we can do about that issue. Okay, all right. So here's just some basic plastic pollution facts for you all. Since the 1950s, we've created about 8.3 billion tons of plastic worldwide, with only 9% of that ever being recycled. I have that picture of the Eiffel Tower there for you because 8.3 billion tons of plastic is really hard to visualize, right? Plastic is super light. So if you can picture the Eiffel Tower, 8.3 billion tons of plastic would equal more than 800,000 Eiffel Towers in weight, right? So that's a lot. In the 70s, our global plastic consumption was about 4.4 pounds per year, like per person, versus today it's around 95 pounds per year per person, and it's also increasing. If we continue at that rate, we'll have an estimation of about 12 billion metric tons of plastic in our landfills by 2050, according to National Geographic. Okay, so according to the Plastic Oceans Organization, we know that we're producing over 300 million tons of plastic every year, and half of that is for single-use plastic, right? So that's all the stuff where we're only using it, maybe 20 seconds, maybe just for a one drink or something else, and then we're throwing it away. Most of those single-use plastic items can't ever be recycled either. And when it comes to things like water bottles, right? If we have a plastic water bottle, it typically can take up to 6 times the amount of water in that one plastic water bottle to even with a quarter cup of oil to just produce that plastic for that one plastic water bottle, right? So it's taking a lot of energy, it's taking a lot of resources. And then, maybe we can recycle that one plastic bottle, but we can't recycle those bottle caps. Unfortunately, we just don't have the infrastructure here to do that. Also, we have, more than 8 million tons of plastics are ending up in our ocean every year. We're seeing that 1 in 3 species of marine mammals are actually being found entangled in a lot of that marine litter. That's some of the, what I'm seeing with the volunteer work that I do with NOAA, is just kind of marine mammal entanglement and strandings. We're also seeing that over 90% of our seabirds are being found with plastic pieces in their stomach, right? Okay, sorry, I'm having an issue with my keyboard. Okay. All right, so we have I'll talk about this picture here in a second. We know that most of the trash in the ocean, about 90% of it consists of plastic. And when we think about plastic, I really want to talk about the word biodegradable with you guys, right? Plastic is not biodegradable. Biodegradable is, when natural organic things are breaking down and then turning back into the environment. So a great example would be leaf litter, right? Imagine a forest, leaves are falling down. That's eventually, those leaves are decomposing back into the soil, back into the environment. And that's part of the system and the cycle. Plastic isn't doing that, right? Plastic is going to break apart, but it's unfortunately just going to break down into smaller plastic pieces called microplastics. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So I just want to bring that word up because there's a lot of greenwashing happening out there, right? With this term kind of being thrown around and biodegradable plastics, but we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. We're also finding that the fish in our Pacific Ocean are actually ingesting up to 24,000 tons of plastic every year. And our Great Pacific Garbage Patch is starting to outnumber marine life 6 pieces of litter to 1 animal. And this picture here, this is at the Bolsa Chica wetlands. This is a place I've been to a lot, my whole life actually, living here. It's off of PCH and Warner. They have a lot of nice trails open and free parking. If you're ever able to visit, I highly recommend it. And this is a nice view of the Wintersburg Channel. So our Wintersburg Channel is serving the cities of Fountain Valley, Garden Grove, and Westminster. It's part of our storm drain system. So anytime it's raining or windy, right, all that trash or litter that's in the streets is going through our storm drain system. It's going through this channel, and you can see that all of this trash is accumulated right here. This yellow rope-looking item is called a trash boom. And so this is trying to keep all that trash inside, right? It's obviously not perfect. We see that floating bag on the other side. Another issue with this trash boom is that unfortunately it's just at the surface, and not all plastic only floats. A lot of it can also sink. So any other trash can go in and out. The Wintersburg Channel then connects into the Bolsa Chica wetlands, and then all that water also connects to Huntington Harbor, then going into the ocean at Bolsa Chica State Beach. Okay, so this graphic here, you can see like the different types of plastic items that we utilize all the times, and then based on their densities, you know, they all have different types of plastic, have different types of chemicals, so they have different densities. So some of them are going to sink, but some of them are going to float. So this kind of gives you a better visual of that. Some other trash things I see all the time. This is also at the Bolsa Chica wetlands, which is an ecological reserve or a marine protected area. And so a lot of these special habitats have a lot of trash too. This is just in my neighborhood while walking my dogs. I unfortunately always see litter in my neighborhood. And I live in Fountain Valley, so Wintersburg Channel is serving my community specifically too. So I try to pick that trash up. This is some trash from when I was surfing. Anytime I go surfing, I try to pick up 5 pieces of trash at least every time, and encourage my friends to do the same. So some of my friends will surf without me, but they'll still pick up trash because they say they just hear me in their ear. But I try to encourage everybody to pick up, 5 pieces of trash anytime you go outside even, right? Anytime you're just leaving your house, it all makes a difference. And this is some tide pool trash. So the tide pool trash makes me extra sad because a lot of those organisms are sessile or stationary. They're not really moving. They're going to just stay in those little pools. So if there's trash in there, they're just having to live in that pollution, right? Sometimes I've found like cigarette butts just kind of decomposing, and the water's all murky and nasty. So we definitely don't need to be littering like that. This is our top 10 types of trash that we find at beach cleanups. I just updated this actually with 2019 data from our last coastal cleanup day. That was in person, where we had, everybody kind of out there. In 2020, we all did virtual cleanup efforts. And it'll be interesting to see what that data shows. What's really remarkable about the 2019 data though is that for a really long time our cigarette butts ranked #1, but now we've seen that food wrappers have actually replaced them, right? All the plastic food packaging, and then in 2020, I mean, the food packaging litter has just really with the pandemic. And then on top of that, on top of an increase of food packaging litter, we're also seeing, masks and gloves and things that we didn't typically see before the pandemic as well. This picture was from our 2018 Coastal Cleanup Day. Artist Katie Peck made this beautiful albatross all out of cigarette butts. So her and her family, who knows how much time it took, but this is like almost 1,000 cigarette butts that she utilized to make this nice trash art for us. Okay, so how does all this trash get here? Is everybody just littering all the time when they're outside? No, thankfully, but unfortunately some of that is happening. However, 80% of that trash that we're seeing at the beach or any of our beaches is getting there from that storm drain system I mentioned earlier, right? We all live in a watershed. We have 11 different watersheds in Orange County. Remember, a watershed is just that area of land that's above sea level, and it's just naturally shaped by by our mountains and our landscape. So we have 11 different watersheds in Orange County. Some of them are small, some of them are big. The Santa Ana River watershed is our largest in Orange County, and that actually crosses multiple county lines, just to give you an idea on different sizes of them. So with all this, litter making its way through our storm drain system, we're finding that 73% of that beach litter worldwide is actually plastic compared to other types of debris. And that 90% of that plastic that we see in the ocean is being carried out by just 10 rivers in Asia and Africa. And then, we're seeing that kind of distributed everywhere. So kind of just a reminder that we're all connected. Even people who live in like the Midwest, let's say in the United States, maybe they don't think they're connected to the ocean. They're in a different watershed, but all of our watersheds eventually drain there, and we all have an impact, and we're all connected that way. So just a little reminder of our storm drain system again. Any of that trash we see in the litter, if it's not getting picked up, it's just going and blowing. Maybe the rain is blowing it, maybe it's the wind, right? We've had some really strong Santa Ana winds recently and rain, and we have more rain coming up this weekend. So again, these catch basins or these gutters, this one has some bars, and we have some cities trying to put grates in. That's kind of helpful, but most of them are open like this, right? So all that trash is just going in there, as well as anything else like chemicals, anything that, dog droppings, anything that's left outside, going through our storm drain, to our channels, and then into the ocean, and oftentimes in a lot of wildlife. And so I mentioned the Great Pacific Garbage Patch earlier. If you're not familiar with that, it's actually two distinct patches that are bounded by our North Pacific subtropical gyre. It's found that, almost half of that trash in there comes from land-based activities from Asia and North America. And that 20% only 20% is coming from like boats and offshore oil rigs and cargo ships. So, most of that trash is coming from land-based activities and people versus the activities that are happening on the water. They're also finding that 70% of the marine debris that we're seeing is actually sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Again, just to reiterate, those different chemicals have different densities. So some things sink and some things float. And so when I first heard of the garbage patch, I thought it was like a trash island. It's definitely not anything like that you're walking on. It's more like a trash soup, right? So we have all of this plastic and litter and lots of tiny microplastics and things too, also just floating around and sinking. And here's a nice graphic from NOAA. So you can kind of see where those two subgyres are, and now they're all connected together, making like one large patch. Also note that this is not our only garbage patch. Every ocean has its own garbage patch. We all have those gyres and currents. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is just, unfortunately, the largest. So it's the best, most well known. Now, maybe you guys have heard of microplastics. Maybe these are new, but microplastics are any small plastic piece that's less than 5 millimeters long. And we actually even have smaller microplastics that are from 0.1 micrometer to 1 millimeter long, called nanoplastics. So really tiny pieces of plastics where we need a microscope to be seeing some of these things. Unfortunately, a lot of our microplastics are coming from microfibers, right? From synthetic clothing material. So this graphic on the right kind of shows you like some of our more organic natural materials we use, like wool or cotton or silk. You can see that they have a larger diameter here, but our microfibers have a smaller diameter. And so these are coming from clothing like nylon, polyester, rayon, anything that's acrylic, things that, unfortunately, clothing that's really comfortable, like leggings and a lot of sportswear. And so these microfibers, every time we wash our clothes, right, they're getting agitated, and so it's shedding and it goes in the water. And these are just, the diameter is too small that, all of our sewage water that we use inside when we're doing laundry goes to a waste treatment process or sanitation district, and it's those fibers are just too small to be filtered for them to catch when they're cleaning our water and filtering them. So a lot of this is, ending up in the ocean. We'll talk about some ways we can mitigate this too, but that's a big source of our microplastics is actually microfibers. This picture on the bottom left here are tiny pieces of microplastics that I actually pulled from under the microscope when I used to work at an environmental consulting company. So I would be looking at benthic sediment samples or just bottom samples of the ocean along our coast, right? And I was supposed to be sorting tiny animals out. So a lot of worms, fish eggs, sometimes little crabs. But I started to just see so many little pieces of trash, fibers, weird little things that I wasn't sure what they were. So I just started to sort them and keep them. But that was really my first exposure to microplastics back in 2017. And I was pretty amazed, to say the least. And again, here's another picture from Charles Moore, the founder of Algalita, and he's actually the captain who first found the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So you can see maybe this is like some organic material, but then here we have this blue microfiber and then this black microfiber as well. So where are microplastics being found? According to Shelley Moore, who works at the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, which is located in Costa Mesa, they're found everywhere, right? We're seeing this in, freshwater and saltwater systems, in rivers and ponds, in the sand of the shoreline, at the surface of the water, in the water column, in the super deep trenches. We're seeing it in ice core samples in the Arctic and Antarctica. They're finding microplastics in things like table salt and packaged tea, right? If you're not having loose leaf tea, if it's in a little packaging, that coating is lined with plastic. And then when it's heated up, little microplastics are being released. We're seeing it in tap water, in bottled water, and in air pollution, right? I listened to a podcast this summer where they were referring to microplastic rain as the new acid rain. So that was pretty astounding. And I also just want to reiterate too, I'll show you this graphic, that they're still finding more microplastics in bottled water than in tap water. And I'll show you that in a second. This picture here, these are nurdles. And so nurdles is how plastic is transported, right? So these tiny little plastic spheres are transported on, big trucks. They're going to a plastic manufacturing plant. They're then melted down and turned into whatever plastic item is going to be created. But a lot of times these have spills and leaks, and then they just end up everywhere. They also look a lot like fish eggs and things that a lot of animals are going to be foraging for since they're so tiny and they're finding them in their environment. Also, a lot of the different plastic chemicals actually smell like some of the prey that birds go after, right? So a lot of times, I hear people say like, oh, animals are dumb. Why are they eating the trash? And it's like, they're not dumb. This looks like their food. It's in their environment where they're foraging, and now it smells like their food. That sea turtle monitoring that I volunteer with, sometimes I see plastic bags floating in the river, and one time I was like, oh, is that a jellyfish? Like, I don't know, I can't tell. So, if I can't tell, I can imagine how easy it would be for a sea turtle to be confused as well. Here's a study kind of highlighting the microplastics in bottled water, right? And so the companies that have the highest concentrations. And so just a reminder that here in Orange County, in central and northern Orange County, we have really clean, safe tap water because we have a very unique partnership with the Orange County Sanitation District and the Orange County Water District, where they're actually able to do this whole filtration system. And they do a step called reverse osmosis, and that filters out things that are DNA particle size. So that's filtering out microplastics for us. But we'll talk about some other water filter options too for people that live elsewhere. But again, buying bottled water is just kind of making this situation worse because it's demanding new plastic. We can't recycle those caps. We know that there's more microplastics in that water as well. So again, those primary sources of microplastics are going to be the nurdles I talked about that you saw pictures of. And then again, like little microbeads that used to be in a lot of cosmetics and personal care products. So I have this picture here on the right kind of showing brands that would use those little plastic beads. And then brands that are utilizing natural exfoliants, right? So I have a face scrub made out of coffee beans from Lush, and that works just as well. And then doesn't have any of those little microplastic beads. Luckily, the Obama administration back in, I think, 2015 passed a law to ban microbeads from being in the production of new personal products and cosmetics. I don't know how well that's enforced though, so it's always good to do your research as a consumer, see what they're using, just to make sure. And then again, those microfibers from those synthetic titles is another primary source. And another primary source that was surprising to me to find out was things like tire dust, right? Marine coating, certain painting and signs, and like dust. So there's a lot of that stuff too, where, you know, we're just living our lives, not really thinking about it, but it's breaking down into these little plastic pieces, or it's using these tiny plastic pieces. And so those are the primary sources. Our secondary sources will be all of those plastic littered items out in the environment that are then going to break apart in a process called photodegradation. So photodegradation is just that, you know, maybe it's a plastic water bottle that's been left at a park for like 2 years. Eventually that sunlight, that oxygen, the wind and the rain and everything, it's going to start to make that plastic weaker and brittle, and it's just going to break apart into tiny microplastics. Something I just learned recently too was that as plastic breaks apart, it also releases carbon emissions. And similar to our surface area to volume ratio, maybe you guys have learned about that in biology. You know, that's usually where it's an inverse relationship. So like the smaller the item, the larger the surface area. Microplastics are just like that. So when they're breaking down, they're actually releasing more carbon emissions than a larger plastic item. So that it's just like the gift that, you know, keeps on giving, plastic. So it kind of begs the question, right? What wildlife is being impacted by plastic? We know that our large plastic pieces are going to cause mechanical blockages, right? If an animal is eating that, it's not getting the nutrients they need. So not only can they choke, but they can also starve. It's going to have behavioral changes and chemical consequences as well. There was a study where they were feeding some fish some microplastics and actually changed their foraging behavior. Again, a lot of those chemicals that are composed in plastics release toxic chemicals like BPA and phthalates, and then the plastic can also act as a vector. So then it's like absorbing other pollutants that are in the environment, like PCBs and pesticides. We know that more than 200 species have been impacted by microplastics, and that at least 700 marine species have been impacted by plastic pollution alone. So again, that's anything in our marine environment, little tiny zooplankton and krill, all the way to our larger megafauna like whales, sharks, and dolphins. There was a study in 2019 that looked at 50 stranded marine mammals with 10 different species. All of them had microplastics. The highest composition of those microplastics was, again, those microfibers, 60% being nylon. Maybe this was from, you know, derelict fishing gear. We have a lot of ghost fishing, right, where fishing gear is just left in the ocean, and a lot of that is rope and nylon and that synthetic material. But of course, they also had food wrapping and packaging and things like that too. Again, they couldn't, you know, it's not confirming that microplastics is what was the cause of death, but they all had high levels of those plastic associated toxins. We also just found in a 2020 report that 88% of the animals that are being recorded with, you know, either being inhaled or having ingested plastic are also already listed as being a threatened or endangered species. And this was a sperm whale in 2019 that actually was found with like 50 pounds of plastic in its stomach off of the Philippines. We then had another sperm whale, same thing, a bunch of plastic in its stomach off of Italy, almost back to back from each other. They're like within a few weeks. What's interesting too is that our sperm whales are really deep divers and they hunt on squid. So it's unfortunate that the plastic is just everywhere. So we know, we can see that how this is harming our wildlife. How is this, impacting us? We know that a lot of these species that are being found with microplastics are species that people consume with their seafood. We're seeing that when laboratory mice are being fed microplastics, they're kind of having an accumulation in the kidney, high levels of stress in the liver and different molecules and things like that as well. And then again, a lot of those plastics contain those chemicals like phthalates and BPA or BPA replacements. And I really want to harp this. You guys are probably seeing this a lot on plastic items at the store where it'll say BPA free. All that means though, chemically, is that they replace that A molecule with an S or an F. Maybe some of you have taken chemistry, maybe you'll take it later, but you'll learn all about that. And so instead of BPA, it's BPS or BPF. Unfortunately, it functions exactly the same as BPA, if not having more severe issues. And so it's just such a, you know, mislabeling of that to say it's BPA free, because it's like, sure, it's BPA free, but there's another BP in here, right? So I just highly recommend, if you can, just to avoid plastic as much as you can. I've been really trying to switch out all of my Tupperware at home, instead of plastic, like Pyrex or the plexiglass, right? Something, or ceramic. Target had like these great ceramic mugs with lids that are like perfect for soup. It's microwavable, it's dishwashable, it's not plastic, except for the lid, but you take that off. But yeah, highly recommend, you know, don't microwave any food in plastic if we can, because again, those molecules are endocrine disruptors. They have a lot of different health diseases and things that we're still trying to research and just figure out how it's impacting us. And then again, because when those plastics are photodegrading, they can absorb different things. And we know that like some of the things that they're absorbing are also bad for our health. And then these microplastics are kind of dispersed throughout the food web. So again, we just need more research. We don't really know what the effect is long term, right? We're not eating just like huge, you know, pounds of plastic every day, but we're kind of exposed to a little bit all the time. And so that's called acute toxicology. And that's something that we'll just have to see what future research says. On that topic though, with microplastics, a report came out last year estimating that people are consuming about a credit card's weight worth of microplastics every week. So that's interesting to think about, and this is a good visual for you there. And then this is someone I follow on social media, the Crazy No Plastic Lady. So this was a good graphic I like that just kind of talks about, you know, the different types of plastics that we're exposed to all the time, and especially little kids, right? Bottles and binkies and toys, things that they're putting in their mouth, things that are also, you know, not usually recyclable, and then just, you know, have these certain chemicals in their production process as well. So again, we need more data, we need more research. We currently don't even have a standardization method for researching microplastics, right? So how are our scientists supposed to work together and compare things and analyze things when there's not really a set standard yet? However, there's some really cool things that have already come out and some great human innovation. So we're going to highlight that right now. Over here in the right corner, you can see these cactus leaves. So we have an actual sustainable plastic that I feel safe saying is biodegradable, because this researcher, Dr. Sandra Ortiz from Mexico, found that she could juice these cactus leaves and just the leaves so that the whole plant is, you know, still alive. It's totally sustainable. She then juices them, adds like a non-toxic chemical. She can add a couple different variables to make the plastic either flexible and like flimsy, or she can make a type of plastic that's like brittle and hard. It only takes her about 11 days, and then the plastic actually biodegrades and breaks down within 60 days for sure, but hers might have been 30 days. It was really impressive. So this is something I'm hopeful for, that, you know, in the future, this is something we could scale up and utilize for like food packaging, right? Because so much of our food that we buy comes in plastic. There's certain foods we can kind of try to avoid that, you know, some of the produce, if you buy it loose or if you're able to go to a farmer's market, but just so much stuff is just already prepackaged. So I really hope we can utilize her amazing research for that. Some of you may have heard of 4Ocean. 4Ocean is a company that is collecting 1 pound of trash for every bracelet they sell. And then they have some really cool new technology that they just made to help skim trash off of the surface. So I'll show you that in a second. We have the Ocean Cleanup Project by Boyan Slat. He thought of this idea when he was 17 years old. It took a long time to raise the money, but it had its first successful haul of trash, I think fall of 2019. You know, the first haul was like kind of a fail, but they went back to their drawing boards. redesign some things, and then we're successful. And so he's utilizing the ocean currents with this technology that's kind of swooping in all the surface plastic. They're then bringing it back aboard, bringing it to the mainland, and then trying to actually reuse that plastic in items that have longevity. So instead of like shirts, things like hats, sunglasses, shoes, things that people aren't going to wash. I see a lot of things online right now where it's like, this shirt was made out of 5 water bottles. And my concern with that is, well, then are we just rewashing those microfibers back, into the system? I don't want to do that. So I think it's really cool that they're specifically trying to make items that, aren't just going to be washed or thrown away right away. We also have the Sea Bin project. So this was made by 2 Australian surfers. They have these big kind of like oil looking drums that just float in the harbor. They bob up and down, and then trash is able to be collected. And then here on the left, these are some microplastic little baby legs is what they're called, but they're kind of like a little trawl that you can make at home for super cheap. And they have, this is from the Civic Laboratory for Environmental Action Research, or the CLEAR Laboratory. They have great protocols and like where you could use these, but we actually had a group of high school students in 2019 make their own set. They got everything from Target, maybe used like their own soda bottle. I think they used like a 2-liter soda bottle. It cost them $10. They made 2 pairs. And so here you can see, so they did one set where they were testing the water next to an outfall in the upper Newport Bay. And then they had a second one that they used to test the water at the dock, right? To kind of see if there was more or less microplastics. And so after they would filter the water through, they would pick out any, large debris that maybe was there stuck in the tights. But this is some of the microfibers that they found, right? This blue piece and this red piece. They found quite a lot. Unfortunately, things got a little crazy at the end of at the beginning of 2020, the end of that school year. So we weren't really able to draw conclusions, but there was microplastics in every sample. And again, you could see, so this one looks really like hard and brittle. Maybe that one came from a rope. This is the 4Ocean boat where, again, it has those arms that I was talking about. So they're able to kind of skim through and just get the surface trash. And these systems have a good sorting system where any organic material, maybe algae or kelp, depending on where they are, they'll sort for that. So they're not like throwing that away. This is a good example of Boy Onslaught's ocean cleanup project, right? So again, you can help be part of the solution at any age. And then this is a super cool thing we just learned about recently. There's been a type of bacteria that was discovered in Japan that can actually like eat certain types of PET plastic. So what we're hoping is that these, this bacteria will be able to eat this type of plastic. At the end, you're left with like a little thumb-sized pellet, and that pellet could then be used to actually be recycled and be reused in our recycling stream. Right now, recycling is really expensive for a lot of different types of plastic. We'll talk about that soon too. And so they really think that this is a way where it would make it more affordable for the market. And so this could be really, really revolutionary. Again, we have another guy, Fionn Ferrier, an Irish teen. He won the Google Science Fair at age 18. He was able to create like this magnetite powder that attracts the microplastics to, makes them all magnetic, and then he just adds like a magnetic rod and just stirs it up, and all the little microplastic pieces are attracted to it. So hopefully we're able to scale this technology for our wastewater treatment facilities, right? And then we could, have our treatment facilities collecting all of our microfibers from our clothes. That would be super wonderful. And so this is just a nice visual there for you to kind of see, the magnetic powder and then all the debris being collected there. This is a video, but I'm going to skip it because we don't have time. I can send that later if you would like. More ways that we can help prevent that microfiber pollution, right? So again, we can avoid fast fashion whenever possible, those fake synthetic materials. It's also a lot of that clothing isn't made very ethically either. If you're gonna be buying those things, I highly recommend, secondhand shopping, going thrifting, giving that clothing item another life. Then you're not demanding for that new fast fashion to be designed. When you can, buying things that are like 100% jean or cotton or wool or hemp even too, like hemp shirts, those are very helpful. Washing your clothes in cool water, making sure you don't put shoes and backpacks and things with your clothes. Those heavy objects are just going to add to the abrasion. Washing by hand is very helpful. So things like your bathing suits, maybe certain leggings or some of that sportswear, maybe if you're wearing it all the time and you're just like, ooh, like this has microfibers in it and I don't want to add to that, just wash it by hand and hang dry it. So lots of ways that we can, try to prevent that. And then again, just as a consumer, making sure we're reading those cosmetics and personal care items. Here we have some portable options that actually filter out microfibers. So the Coraball and the Guppy Friend are two portable options. And then the Lint Lover filter is a permanent option for people that, own their own washing machine. And then clearly filtered and tap water are two options to filter out microplastics from water. So my siblings live in Oregon, and so they got the clearly filtered one. They do not have the water that we have here that we're lucky to have. Maybe you're like, what else can I do, right? So I'm sure you all know our 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Again, there's so helpful, and they're so helpful in that order. They're in order by what is most impactful, right? So if we are reducing the amount of plastic that we're buying and using, very helpful. You're decreasing the demand. If then we reuse all the plastic that we have in our home, maybe that's with used items you already have. I'm like saving all my jars and, plastic tubs from sour cream, trying to, oh, this can hold this type of craft, or maybe I can use this to store this thing, or for planting, gardening, right? Trying to separate little succulents and stuff. And then recycle, right? Recycle is helpful and we should do it wherever we can, but it is not the solution for our plastic pollution. The new R's that we have are going to be refuse. So refusing plastics in the first place, especially our single-use plastics that aren't even recyclable. So what I've found is when I'm doing takeout, I used to say like, please no utensils. And I think the please always like threw the workers off. I would always get utensils. So now I'm saying, no, thank you, no utensils. Sometimes if I can before, if I'm at the drive-through window and I'll like see them and I'll just be like, hey, are there utensils in there? Can you take them out before I touch it? I think the rule is, if the consumer touches it, we have to keep it. And so, practice makes perfect. It's, now kind of a habit. And then repurposing. So before you're going to throw something away that could go in the landfill, how could you maybe be creative and do something else with it, right? So this is some really cool outdoor patio furniture that was made by reusing tires. So when it comes to recycling, am I recycling properly? So we have those numbers on the bottom of all of our plastic items, and these are resin codes, right? So these mirror the types of chemicals that made that type of plastic. And so here are examples of like, this is a number 1, and like all of our single-use plastics are usually a number 7. A good rule of thumb is that the higher the number, the less likely it is to be recyclable. So if you need to buy something plastic, look for that number and try to buy the lower number, right? I do this for things like, vitamins and, supplements like that, where I can't find a glass or metal item option. So I'm, at least it's like a number 1, at least that one is probably going to be recycled. Another issue with our recycling is that we do not have a standard for recycling in this country. Not every, city recycles. Even in California, not every city recycles. So unfortunately, all of our recycling centers and infrastructures are different. They're not all equipped to be able to recycle all these numbers. And in fact, there's just not a market for most of these numbers to be recycled. It's too costly. So here in Orange County, it's like, I think we're only recycling like number 1, 2, sometimes 3, and like 5 has a market, but it's more of like you have to drop it off or mail it to a company that's trying to recycle it. And then again, this is city-based. So unfortunately, it falls on, the citizen, the consumer, to have to call their trash company, figure out, is the trash company sorting trash from recycles? Some places do that, some don't. Costa Mesa does that as a city. I think Laguna Beach does that as a city, but not every city sorts their trash from recycles. and then calling to see, okay, so you're who recycles my stuff. What numbers do you recycle? You know, not all of them take all of those numbers. And like I said, again, in Orange County, we're only doing a few of these, and there's so many numbers. So when in doubt, maybe you're trying to get soda or a juice. If it comes in a can or a glass option, try to buy that instead, right? I feel like usually cans are pretty affordable. I made my boyfriend do that for all the soda he drinks, and I just, you know, scold him anytime it's plastic. And the good thing with that is that cans can actually be recycled into a brand new can within 45 to 60 days. So it's super sustainable. There's some movements to have, you know, water being made in cans for like airplanes and things like that. So hopefully that movement continues. But unfortunately, again, that plastic, even the plastic that's getting recycled, it's having to be melted down. Brand new plastic has to be added, and then it's like made into like filler or insulation, right? It's not like this milk jug is made into a brand new milk jug. That's not really happening. And then
Can I just cut in?
yeah,
Yeah, you guys, anybody that's eaten lunch, some of you guys were in middle school last year. Some of you guys were at Godinez. You saw the amount of waste that goes into the lunches that you're provided at school. So if anybody wanted to take on a project, there is somebody at the district who is trying to cut down the amount of non-recyclable plastics that's in lunches. So that would be like, if anybody's got a lot of energy to tackle that, come and see me. I would love to sort of address that, partly the food waste, but also just the paper and plastic waste. Anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there.
no, thank you. That's a great point, and I just want to reiterate that if anybody wants to take that on, I support you so much. We have a volunteer with Coastkeeper who she started the Skip the Plastic Straw movement. I think she was at Capistrano Valley School District. She's like in South Orange County, but she's gotten like, I think 4 school districts now to stop serving single-use plastic straws. Garden Grove School District just signed on board. And, you know, she was like probably 12 when she started it. Now she's like 15. So like you can do it. I think the youth has a very adults listen to the youth, right? It's really powerful. If we're like, oh my God, our kids are talking about this, like we should actually do something about it. So
Just
like
one other thing, like Lou Carrera, who's I don't know, he's really an advocate for environmental stuff.
yeah.
What is he? He's the councilman or whatever for, yeah, he would be interested in meeting with students as well.
Yes. So if anybody is interested, I highly encourage and would love for that to happen. Okay. And then again, so when you can, please recycle, you know, your paper, your glass, your cartons, your metals. Consider buying alternatives to plastic whenever you're able to. Also just note too, with things like cardboard and paper, as soon as cardboard gets greasy, it's unrecyclable. So like pizza boxes usually aren't recyclable anymore because of the grease. And then things like a lot of paper cups, like at Starbucks or for other teas or coffees, those are actually lined with plastic, so then they're not recyclable. Okay, so again, reusing, right? Reusing is reducing a lot of the plastic that you buy. I really liked, I like eating yogurt, but I was, you know, feeling bad about all the single-use little plastic containers. So I decided to just buy a large container of Greek yogurt, reuse my own containers, add my own jam, add my own granola, whatever I wanted instead, right? So then again, like I'm using a lot of pasta sauce jars as glasses in my home, like drinking glasses, using them to propagate plants. You could use, you know, you could paint on them to make a vase. I had a girlfriend do pickle jars, and then she spray painted them, the top, and then glued like little toy dogs or cats to the lid and made little like animal treat presents for all her friends that had pets. So there's a lot of ways to get creative and reuse things. There's tons of plastic alternatives and zero waste options now, right? Reusable water bottles, reusable utensils, straws, food containers, you know, alternatives from Ziploc bags. Also, if you have Ziploc bags, you can just wash them and then reuse them. I'm doing that. We stopped buying Ziploc bags in 2018. We have like the same 20, and we're just washing them out and reusing them, right? Because it's plastic, it'll just last forever, and I can do that. So, you know, maybe carrying it's hard right now. We're not eating inside anyway, but when we go back to eating out, maybe bringing your own Tupperware with you instead of having to get the styrofoam Tupperware for your leftovers. That was Diana's New Year's resolution one year, right? And she knows she's always gonna have leftovers, so she would just bring her Tupperware with her, and that's so much better. And then again, these are all things where it's just practice makes perfect. In the beginning, you're kind of forgetting, or it's like, oh no, I forgot this, or like, oh, I didn't have that, but that's okay. Nobody's perfect. We just, if everybody's trying, that is so helpful and makes such a good impact. And we have all these things now for like our bathroom and our kitchens, right? Utilizing bamboo for things like razors and toothbrushes and hairbrushes. Things like silk floss instead of, like those single-use flossers, reusable Q-tips, different types of bar soaps and shampoos, ton of different stuff out there. And my favorite refill store is called Eco Now. They have a shop in Costa Mesa at the lab, and they just opened up a brand new location in Anaheim that's huge. I haven't been there yet, but I've heard great things. So they're my personal favorite, but this is like my little go-to for eating out. And you don't have to buy a to-go kit. You can just take the silverware at home and put it in a Ziploc bag, or maybe you have an extra little pouch or something, and you can make your own to-go kit, right? This is my little holder for all my straws and chopsticks, and then I have like a smaller one for a smaller bag when I'm like traveling. Just some ideas for you. These are like a tablet toothpaste that I got from Target. I now have a different tablet toothpaste called Bite. It's like an online subscription, but it's definitely my favorite. You can use bar soaps, bar shampoos. There's different options for deodorant. So just to give you guys an idea visually. And then again, for tea, I'm a big tea drinker. I was so upset when I found out about microplastics being in tea. So now I order or buy loose leaf tea. I have different bags. These little animals are made of silicone. You just fill them up. It's still just as good. And then I don't have to worry about any waste or any microplastics. This is my little set that I take when I'm on the road for traveling as well. So like this little container here was like a small thing of jam. My friend does Hello Fresh for like those meal kits or whatever. She had extra ones. She let me use it. I kept the little jar and I use it for my ibuprofen. This was also from that Hello Fresh thing. It was like vinegar for one of the meal recipes. And then now I use it for like a face toner. So just some ideas for you. Again, when we're shopping as consumers, we want to be careful about greenwashing. So greenwashing is just, all the companies that are trying to hop on board saying it's eco-friendly, but really it's not. Maybe it looks green. They're using, earth words, things like that. It's just flashy. So here's a good example of these dog poop bags. The only thing that's, eco-friendly about this is that the box is recyclable, but that's it. Versus this company here, the company is called Beyond Green, and then they make these biodegradable bags. I've actually visited the location, and they're using a corn maize instead of starch because it breaks down faster. They have 4 legitimate certifications, right? Kind of showing that it decomposes, it's industrial compostable, it's at home compostable, right? So we're actually looking for words like that and looking for certifications versus this box has nothing. My favorite go-to is the TUV Austria certification because they're in Austria, they're very strict. So if I see that on a product, I know like this is legitimate, and and they also provide the at-home compostable certification. You guys might start to see a lot of things that are saying compostable now because we finally have a Biodegradable Products Institute, or BPI, for the US. But all that means is that it will decompose in an industrial composting facility, right? Which all of our landfills are not equivalent to that. They don't all do that. You need to have very specific conditions. And again, it's just because, we have guidelines, but we don't have actual regulations that are enforced. So the labeling can just, anyone can kind of say anything about their product. So again, it puts it on us, the consumer, to do the extra research. Regarding seafood and fishing gear pollution and that ghost fishing gear that I talked about, I recommend using the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch website. So any type of seafood you want to eat, you can type it in there. They'll tell you if the fishery is sustainable or not, and they'll give you a great alternative if it isn't. And then NOAA has a similar website, seafood facts, but the Seafood Watch website is really good. Advocating, right? Getting involved, talking to your people at the school district, calling legislators, signing petitions, kind of, using your dollars as consumers to vote, right? With what we're voting by, with what we're buying, we're demanding for change. Maybe encouraging your favorite small coffee shop or cafe to, ditch single-use plastics, or maybe to stop, always giving out straws, things like that. Utilizing social media to share that information, to educate people, right? Because we're all only going to protect what we, understand, and we're only going to understand it if we're taught it. Again, we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We just need millions of people doing it imperfectly. If we're all doing what we can, we'll have just a tremendous positive impact. Here's some more helpful websites. This is a social media account and website that I created just to, have more information and resources on this. We have a lot of programs at Orange County Coastkeeper. Unfortunately, right now, we're not able to do our monthly beach cleanups, but we do have a virtual cleanup program called Beautification on Your Block. We're also providing free cleanup kit supplies. So we're doing little pop-up drop-offs on Fridays, and then leaving it out of our office on Wednesdays. If you guys have any suggestions on maybe where you think that would be necessary, or where some emergency cleanups could happen, we'd love to hear that from you too. And thank you so much. I would love to have time for questions if we have some time. I'll stop sharing. Okay.
If we have a lot of interest too, we'd be happy to drop off cleanup kits at the school for you all to pick up if you ever get a chance, if you're ever visiting campus. If there's any interest at all, let us know. We'd be happy to drop some off.
That was great. I haven't heard it talk about the plastic stuff in a while. So it was really great to be updated, and really kind of sad. So anybody have any comments or questions? I will post a recording of this, and I think partly people probably need to process stuff a little bit, but any questions? Okay, so you see the chat?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
How optimistic are we about the future in terms of plastic? Honestly, very right now, just because of all this research that's coming out, and the public is now kind of becoming more concerned. And so I'm hoping that will get to the manufacturers, because that's really how we're going to stop this problem, is by turning off that plastic faucet, right? We can clean up as much as we want and like keep the shit from sinking by taking out, picking up plastic and removing it and not consuming it ourselves. But we really need to get the manufacturers on board to stop using it in the first place. And I think with all this new public interest in this issue, we can hopefully push for that more. So that advocacy and education, if really that's like the best that you can do to help, great, that's plenty. Because the more we talk about it, the more that, we'll get this to happen. So how about you, Christina? Do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's one thing I really love about social media and the internet age, is that we can just so quickly share this information with so many people, and really spread the message so fast. And I just read a thing today actually that made me feel pretty hopeful, where it was talking about a new bill to be passed, hopefully, with like plastic manufacturers, or the companies, big companies like Coca-Cola, and, the ones that we're seeing have so much pollution impact when people do these like plastic or trash audits, right? They're finding like brand names of this one type of litter. And so having them pay for the recycling. And I think that would be a good way, is, like have them fund the market. If recycling doesn't have a market, let's find a way to figure it out. I definitely think this issue it needs to be solved in a multi-pronged way. So it has to be, with our government and with policies and having better laws in place. It needs to be from the consumer. What are we demanding for? What are we buying? What are we saying? And then, spreading that awareness and information as best as we can. Trying to turn off that plastic tap. Okay. Did anybody have any questions on any slide numbers, or want me to go back to anything?
we just got a question. Is it true that corporations actually produce significantly more waste than citizens overall? I think you might be referring to the stat that, especially about carbon, right? Carbon emissions,
Oh,
and how it's like how 70% of emissions are actually from like 10 corporations, 10 big corporations. That is true. However, they are also including just like the consumers, right? The consumers' emissions included in those corporations. So even though it is these corporations producing the things that we are consuming, it's up to us to then send them that message, right? So by voting with our wallet, and so putting our money in the things that we believe in, we're sending that message saying, hey, this is what we want. This is where you should be investing in. And, you know, we're all going to hold them accountable that way. I think so, by using our voice, using our wallet.
yes.
Other ways we can take to reduce our plastic consumption. Yes, lots of ways. So on our website, we actually have a zero waste blog that has a lot more ideas that you could take. And also, you know, with this recording, there were those lists that Christina had on there. You can take a closer look at those. But also just follow our social media, follow that Plastic Me Not social media. We're constantly posting tips on how to reduce our plastic intake because it's so hard. It's everywhere, right? We're reliant on it. So we're just trying to change our lifestyle, change our habits.
Yeah, and
So
that's
for me, I actually just started when I shop. Now I start noticing what the packaging looks like and start thinking about how it's put together and make choices based on that. You know, so I stopped buying. I buy things in cans. If they have something in plastic versus it's got a paper wrapping, I'll choose the paper wrapping. So just a lot of it for me has just been awareness. And truthfully, I never get it right away. I have to it is like Christina was saying, it's a habit. It's like bringing your own bags into the store. It took me like a year before I actually knew, now I never forget the bags, but literally I have to make it so, oh, if you forget the bags now, you got to go back to the car and get the bags. Cause I would never own that.
Yeah, and don't feel the need. A lot of the zero waste movement online, especially I've noticed just a lot of consumers